sitting down for a job interview now for the job.
Is this a job interview?
Well, always. Could be. How do you sell yourself?
Well, I think you've got to think about the context. Any person is only as good as what the timing is and what's required at the time. And I think, to be honest, at the time, we've had a lot of change. We're in the middle of a crisis. I think it's helpful having someone that's been working in the game, that's been observing. I've come from the commercial side of the game, but I've had exposure to a number of different elements of what I think we need. And at a particular point in time, I come from a financial background. We're in a crisis. We need to reset the rugby league economy. What I can bring is a diligent understanding of numbers, driving revenue, thinking about how we manage costs. But more importantly, I really love this game. And it sounds like a cliche, but I really do. I owe a lot to rugby league. I've been in Australia for about 8 years now, and I've grown to become an Australian and through rugby league. And I believe I've got something that I can give back to the game at a particular point in time to try and leave it in a better way than when I started. And that's very motivating. This game means a lot to a lot of people. Well,
I've been quite critical of the NRL leadership and structure in recent years. I think there's been a lot of failings. The NRL has chosen to address a lot of those with deaf ears. But what I want to know now is, as a new guy in town, knowing where we come from, and we have backgrounds in the game that go back many, many years, and have seen the game prosper and in recent years struggle a little bit, how do you, where do you start to put your focus to make the game grow and be what it should be? Because the game, I don't believe, is what it should be at the moment.
Yeah, let me start by acknowledging the fact that I think we do need to be more transparent about what we do at the NRL and as a game. I think we need to be more quicker, to be blunt, to react faster to what's in front of us. The environment and the world is changing, and we need to change with it. And I also think that we need to be more accountable and not accountable for actions. Having said all that, you have to do things quite deliberately, and I believe that there's 3 phases we have to go through. The first phase is we have to stabilise, and part of stabilising is just taking stock. We're reducing our costs, we're focusing on locking in our revenue. We need to make some changes together with the players and the clubs and the state leagues to stabilise the game. Then we can start to think about renovate, and the reason I use that terminology, we've got a wonderful house that we love, rugby league. A hurricane has come through it, which is COVID. The upside of this is to think about how we can come out and rebuild our house even stronger, and to take advantage of perhaps the things that we should have done earlier, we can do so now. And that's the renovate phase. Thinking differently, reinvigorating tribalism, thinking about how we can get more people to stadiums, thinking about how we might be able to create an even more entertaining product. And then the third phase is grow. And I think you've got to do it in that order. And growth can come from a number of areas, whether it's the international game, whether it's the clubs and the competition structure, the products and experiences we offer our fans. But we've got to go through those different phases. And right now, it's important to stabilise.
I'll tell you a story. About 25, 26 years ago, I wrote a story about the AFL threat into rugby league. AFL at the time was spending $6 million a year on development in country Queensland and country New South Wales. The ARL back then, as it was spending 1.5, so a quarter of what the AFL was spending. And when I spoke to the ARL at the time about that, they said, look, AFL will never take us on. Since then, we've seen the AFL threat just encroach across what we always considered to be rugby league territory. How do we combat that threat? Is there a plan to fight back and start reclaiming rugby league heartland?
Of course there is. And our chairman, Peter V'landys, and the commission are 100% committed to us being the best we can be. And that includes thinking strategically about what our competitors are doing, but more importantly, thinking about how we can address some of the issues that we haven't addressed in the past. Australia is an incredibly competitive sporting landscape. We'd be crazy not to think about how we might do things better in order to better connect with particularly regional New South Wales and Queensland, but then ultimately other areas of growth opportunity across Australia. So Paul, of course, we've got a lot to do, and we can't overpromise and underdeliver. We've got to work methodically through everything, but it's not just about spending more money in areas. It's about being cleverer or being more innovative about the activities and the things that we do That's how we're going to win, not just about increasing expenditure.
So we've all read the reports. You've just gone and slashed $80 million worth of costs out of head office, and we're wondering how you did it.
Well, a couple of things there, Ben. I'm glad you brought that up because we're aiming to reduce costs by $50 million permanently going forward. This year, we've had to reduce costs significantly more than that, but we've had the benefit of not having full stadiums and crowds and some of the other costs that go with the revenue. But the permanent cost reduction that we're aiming for is $50 million next year and beyond. And that lies in front of us. We haven't done it yet, but we have a plan to do it. Rugby league is a team sport, and to use that analogy, we have to address the drop in revenue, which is quite significant over the next couple of years, in a way in which we can smooth it out and everyone feels some of that pain. And some of that pain has to be felt by the head office getting much more efficient with how we do business. So the answer is a combination of things. We're having to rethink our teams, perhaps merge departments together. We have to rethink the portfolios and the responsibilities of what people do, and we also have to look at reducing our spend in areas that perhaps we haven't had the return on investment that we had previously.
The COVID has hit the game. How much has that cost the game in dollars?
Well, if you look at it from a whole of game perspective, I mean, we forecast to be down somewhere between 25 and 30% in revenue.
Which is what in dollar terms?
Well, the NRL was producing at the end of last financial year, it was about somewhere between $540 and $550 million. And a big chunk of that has dropped off this year, either because we've renegotiated our contracts with our broadcast partners and our corporate partners, but also because we haven't been able to sell tickets. But then you have to look at the clubs as well. And the clubs have memberships, they have merchandise and licensing programs, and they too are funded by owners that are impacted by COVID. So there's a knock-on effect, and the whole economy has taken a hit of around 25 to 30%. And that won't just be a 2020 problem. That'll be a problem for the next, this is going to have a tail on it. And a lot of our corporate sponsors have been heavily impacted by this too. So we're going to have to work our way out of this, but we have a plan to do that.
So if revenue is down and it appears it's going to stay that way for some time, why is expansion still on the radar?
Well, remember earlier I said, you've got to stabilise, renovate and grow. You have to begin with the end in mind. We're ambitious, we want to grow, we want to address some of the opportunities that we haven't taken advantage of in the past. So you need to start planning for that now. But our chairman has been very vocal about this. Expansion will only happen if there's a solid business case for it. So the numbers have to stack up. It has to add value to the economy. We need to do that analysis in a post-COVID environment. We need to figure out if it's going to add value to the game. And if it does, well, then we need to have a plan to get there. It's not off the table, but equally, there are a few things that we have to do first before we move to that phase.
How do you go dealing with the warring tribes? There's no doubting that the NRL CEO job is one of the toughest in the country, and that's largely based on the politics inside the game. How have you found that component?
Yeah, that's what we love about sport. That's what we love about rugby league, is everyone is passionate and everyone has that point of view. And tribalism is kind of what makes us an even more competitive and compelling sport. And I think one thing that 2020 and COVID has shown us is that when you have a clear uniting goal, we can actually work together off the field. We compete vigorously on the field. I mean, the game is absolutely competitive and intense. But through COVID, a uniting goal that was set by the Commission, May 28, everyone came together, players, clubs, broadcast partners, sponsors, people at the NRL. We all worked together to get back on the field. The players and the clubs have shown tremendous discipline. Yes, we've had a few lapses here and there at adhering to the protocols. We've shown what's possible if we have a clear goal and we work together. There's no reason why we can't continue that momentum into the future. But it's tough. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a vested interest in what they think is the right way to do things. And my job is to make sure that I'm transparent, make sure that I'm communicating effectively and that everyone knows what they need to know.
Just on that, everybody has an opinion, and I think the big thing that I've found in recent years with the way the NRL's operated, is a lot of grassroots fans have just felt like they've been dismissed by the NRL, and their opinion and their love for the game is not important. And it's very much a don't worry about it, we've got it under control. And to your point about transparency, when the NRL started making mistakes and doing things poorly, rather than admit to their errors, basically just closed up the, pulled the curtains down and said to everybody, nothing to see here. So I think there's some ground to be made up from the NRL with the fan base in general to say, look, we love the game as well. We're not just administrators here and looking after our own career prospects. We're actually here for the benefit of rugby league. Yeah. What can you say to the fans, just to say to them, look, we're here with you?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Paul. I mean, because we're not here if it's not for the fans, right? Yeah. Like, we're in the entertainment business.
But we don't want just lip service there, which I think the fans have been given in previous administrations, too much lip service.
Fair enough. And I've already started thinking about how we might open up channels of communication where you're able to tap into the ideas, where people do feel like they are heard and they have a voice. And I think, I think our chairman, Peter, has indicated that some of the changes we made this year were driven by the commission thinking about what the fans want and what's going to make this a better product for the fans. So I think we've demonstrated that we are up for that change and we are up for listening. And most importantly, I know it's a funny word to use, but I take this job really seriously. It's a big responsibility and you have to be accountable. Who are we accountable for? We're accountable to our stakeholders. But you know what? That's a buzzword. We're in this business because we're in the entertainment business and our fans actually matter and they count. And if they feel like they're getting lip service, Paul, they'll take their money and they'll take their time and they'll spend it somewhere else.
And I think part of that comes with forming close working relationships with those stakeholders. So the NRL clubs, the state leagues, because they are the closest to their constituents. And because there's been this separation, there's this distrust between clubs, state leagues, the NRL, everybody involved in running the game, is the fans themselves have felt a disconnect from the game that they love. So I think that's the starting point, is it not?
Can I build on what you said, Ben? Because it's actually, it's central to everything. The clubs are the brands from which the fans connect to the players, right? So you can't do anything unless you're working with the clubs to connect to their fans, because we're a tribal game and there's a sense of belonging. But the clubs are the brand that the game exists through. Of course, the players are the heroes, but the clubs bring people together with that sense of community. So you can't do something at head office and think that you're going to connect with the fans. You connect to the fans through the players and the clubs. But equally, we're also a sport. So we need to connect with participants, players, grassroots, kids of all ages.
Absolutely.
How do we do that? Through the state leagues. Yes. And, particularly if you think about how structurally challenged we are in regional New South Wales and in regional Queensland and other places where we want to grow, the only way we connect with mums and dads, with volunteers, with young kids, is through those people on the ground in those regions. So if we don't have a good relationship inside the game and we're not aligned, states, clubs, NRL, what hope do we have to connect with the people that really matter?
Andrew Abdo, thanks for coming in tonight. Really appreciate it. And on behalf of myself and Paul, may the rugby league gods be on your side.
It's great to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
All right. Now.